Welcome to Female Fluence. We are a place of women empowering women. This is a safe environment where females are not judged nor afraid to flourish. My goal is to help you live an energized life of balance, whether as a mom, a wife, or in your profession. It is time to have self-worth and self-compassion. Live in the present moment and surround yourself with only healthy connections. So join me, Promash Shua, a woman empowerment life coach, an educator, and a mother of three, to help take you on a journey of true identity and inspiration. The pressures on our kids today are immense. They are working and testing to meet standards, piling on volunteer work, leadership roles, AP classes, the list goes on and on, just to get into their college dream. Yet for many, it ends in rejection, leaving them questioning their self-worth and unsure of what college sweatshirts even wear for their senior photos, which is such a big deal. We have all seen the toll this takes and the pressure that our kids are under. But with all this hard work, are they genuinely learning, or are they just meeting requirements? Let's just think about that for a minute. And what about the price we are all paying? Family time was sacrificed for endless tournaments, expensive tutors, internships, AP exams, all to help build that top-tier portfolio. Their childhoods, one filled with play and exploration, are increasingly consumed by relentless demands for achievement, often leading to mental distress that can last a lifetime. Then after college graduation, many young adults find themselves in careers they never wanted in the first place, burned by student debt and feeling unfulfilled. The inauthenticity of this path can lead to mental, emotional, and physical burnout. My guest today, Pam Roy, is on a mission to change this system. She believes in honoring our children's unique selves, allowing them to learn through experiences, and allowing them the freedom to explore beyond the rigid standards of traditional education. Through writing, films, and books, and initiatives, and mentorship, Pam advocates for meaningful education opportunities and community-based support to foster children's and young adults' mental health and well-being. She challenges our current one-size-fits-all school system and highlights the meaning-oriented philosophy of renowned psychiatrist Viktor Frankl. She believes the standard education model we use to prepare our children for life is not working well for us. In her book, Parenting from the Passenger Seat: How Our Children Develop Capabilities, Connections, and Meaningful Lives, she writes about parenting from a very different perspective and believe it's time for a shift. Pam, I am so honored to have you on Female Fluence. Thank you for being my guest today.
I am so honored to be your guest. I love the work you're doing, and it's so powerful that we have so many voices out there that are beginning to question how we're raising our children and what kind of culture and environment we want to have for ourselves and our families.
Yes, it's very true. Well, Pam, tell us more about you. I know your resume is extensive, but tell me how you got to this point of your life, where you are today. How did you get here?
Really, I got here through my life experiences, as we all get to a certain point. I'm a proud 60, almost 65. Next week, I turn 65.
Oh, happy
So
early
I
birthday.
thank you. I really came about because I was a late bloomer and an early achiever. So what that means is when I went to college, it was in that very intense era that women had to break the ceiling and go out there and really get in the men's world. And so I did that. I was a good student. I meandered, at the time. No one, college for all was not a thing. I dropped out of community college twice. I went to a state school, ended up at USC getting a business degree, and then going into real estate consulting. And just doing the grind. I was very successful young, became a partner of a real estate consulting firm when I was 27. I opened their Washington, D.C. office. I had the car, the condo, the travel, and all of a sudden my body just was not, they called it irritable bowel or whatever.
Started
It was
talking
just,
to you, right? Your
yes,
body.
my body just was saying this is not the life. And I had always envisioned myself as a mom, always envisioned myself. But I was so busy pursuing this dream that was this trajectory that if I did this, then this would happen and I would be happy. And yet here I was with supposedly the dream, according to what the promise was, but it wasn't my dream. It wasn't who I was, and I didn't feel that I could really continue. So I actually quit my job with no other job. How's that?
A little
And
scary.
yeah, a little scary. I call myself a cliff jumper, and I've done that throughout my life, where it's just when I know that I am not on the right course, that I have to figure out a way, and I just kind of throw myself at the wind and see what happens. And I say follow the bouncing ball, and it always has, the road has always risen. And so anyway, so I did make time. I ended up getting married at 35 and having three beautiful daughters that are now 23, 25, and 27. And so I was an older parent. So having done that, I looked at raising my children a little differently. And really, this 40-year gap really showed me the difference in their ability to work, have time, and the mold that they were placed into, or they were expected to perform, to, tests, adult driven. I mean, where was their time to discover themselves and have time for nurturing relationships? So I really pushed back. I put my kids in alternative education. And then by high school, they wanted to go to a regular school.
Right.
And so they went to an intense independent school. And really there I began really seeing the mental, I saw it in my community all the time. We were having, of course, suicide was in the news, and all sorts of distress, eating disorders, people being diagnosed with learning disabilities. And I'm like, what's going on? So about the time my older daughter went to college and my two younger ones, because there was 3 and 4 years, they're very close in age, I was looking at doing something about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, we've strapped our kids to this conveyor belt
Right.
where they have to be answerable. And I questioned myself as a mom because it was something I assumed. Of course, my kids have to go to college to be successful in life. Of course, this is what you do. But to have them so narrowly defined by a grade or a test score or even a piece of paper, really had me challenge myself. But again, by that time, my kids are drinking the Kool-Aid, right? All their friends
Yeah.
are doing it. It's what they want to do.
Yep.
And so off we all go. And my younger daughter, when she was a freshman, decided she wanted to go to an East Coast NYU for a summer program. And I thought, apply, let me know what's going on. And it turned out she wanted to go to see Justin Bieber, not really go for the academic or educational
Of
component. But
course.
so it didn't work out for her. But what I did see was one of the first online school counseling master's degree. And that's really when my eyes really opened. So I had these years of experience as someone who had built businesses, got married to an entrepreneur, did a lot of investing. So I was seeing this shifting world, and I was seeing corporations, this hierarchical structure that used to accept, like, give us, your degree and come, and that was what was required, to this flattening out and spoke looking for skills, and too many kids with the same degrees and not enough, and really being caught in the algorithm of being able to get a job and then thinking it's them. And this same business model applying to colleges, where the admissions was based on a number, and they didn't really see the students in most cases. So I began looking at this input for output mechanistic system. So here I am at 56 getting a master's degree, and part of it was an immersion period in New York, which I went to. And I had all these other students with me, many from economically disadvantaged,
Right.
where they're promising them the, this degree from this prestigious university would, of course, set them up, but they had undergraduate loans. And the cost of this course for 2 years was $81,000.
You're
So when
kidding.
you, yeah, so when you
Wow.
think of a school counseling degree, and then you think for 2 years you can't work, so there's what's called opportunity costs, right? So even if they
Right.
could earn 50,000 a year, that's $100,000 cost on top of,
Right.
and the median salary was 50,000. And as I'm a market researcher by background. And so began looking at this saying, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. At the same time, they're projecting this increased need for school counselors. We're seeing in the reality that they were hiring academic advisors more than they were hiring school counselors, and they only needed an AA degree
Oh,
or
okay.
security guards. So the budgets were going different, and everything again was to keep kids on this track. So I finished all my coursework, learned a lot about, too much information, the same thing. And I was, of course, as an older person, looking at this much differently. And so I did a practicum here locally at San Clemente High School. And they had one school counselor, one part-time school counselor, and 7 academic advisors. And so this wonderful organization, Wellness and Prevention Center, was a nonprofit of social workers that were working in there. I was allowed to do my internship, and then really saw in the distress that was happening and the resources that really weren't available. Again, it was just this conveyor belt, kind of get them to the next grade, get them to the next thing, and then get them out. And as relational human beings, I know that is difficult. At the
Yeah.
same time, no experience in the real world. And I'm hearing of kids that, go through their degrees and then suddenly go out and actually get a job in that and hate what they're doing.
Exactly.
And I had this experience even with my daughters now in the early 20s. 2 of them live in New York, one lives in Dallas, and talking to their friends and going out to dinner. And there was like 12 of them at one point, I was counting. And really, there was only one that liked their job. Everybody, and they had high prestige, working for prestigious hotels and investment firms and news corporations. And it was like whoa, this was this promise. So all of this came together. A dear friend of mine, she was in NCL, Kara Cragen, said, Pam, why don't you start writing about this and start telling parents based on your business experience and your own experiences what you're seeing. And as you know, starting anything, and I'm thinking it was probably true for you too,
So
this,
scary.
yes, of being vulnerable. And really, I mean,
Yes.
I have such
That
compassion.
vulnerability. I mean, it's so real, but it's really scary to put yourself out there.
Yes.
I'm right there with you.
Yes, especially in opinions that were different
Right.
than what the prevailing wisdom was. And so for me, it was really, I thought, okay, well, I'll try. She developed my website, she handled my social media, and the blog just began to have responses that were really positive of people feeling like, oh, wow, that's what I was feeling. I just,
Right.
I didn't have a validation of it, which is really what my book was all about, was really not so much to convince anybody that might have a counter opinion and truly believe that they're doing the best they can for their child, which I completely respect and understand, but for those that were feeling uncomfortable, wondering how to
Right.
get off this linear trajectory rocket ship we were all on. And so anyway, so the blog ended up leading to multiple things, including an introduction to Viktor Frankl's grandson, Alex, where I really began to dive deep into meaning and purpose and how important that was to our mental health and well-being. And so when we try to make an artist a scientist or a scientist an artist, this standardized mold that we try and prepare our children for to fit into an economic structure.
Right.
Look around. We have the sickest society. People are stressed out.
Yeah.
This is not even how humans are meant to live. We're meant to live in collaboration, not competition. We're meant to live with a responsibility to ourselves and to others, to the life we've been given. And so, anyway, I began doing the blog, met Alex. He introduced me to his partners who were doing the feature film of Man's Search for Meaning. And anyway, we ended up becoming partners saying, let's do impact films. So we have a series that's not yet released called Inside the Machine that takes a look at youth inside our high pressure education systems and what that does to them to be scheduled, 18, 20 hours a day in many cases as they're performing, as they're doing adult driven activities. How do they discover? And at the same time, they have no perspective of this rapidly changing world. I call it the great disconnect. We're so disconnected in these systems from really what's happening and from the discovery of how we can contribute to this new
Right.
changing world, right? Which is so
When will
critical.
these be released?
Well, hopefully next year. Hopefully
Okay.
next year finds a
So
platform.
this is through Straight Up
Straight
Impact,
up impact.
and
Yes. So
they're all women that are working
yes,
together,
we're a
which is I love it.
women-owned company. Yes, and so it really was to put out in films that inspire humanity about what's possible. So we have feature films like Man's Search for Meaning, Joseph Merrick, which is the last year of the Elephant Man's life, and someone who treats him like a human being and not a grotesque being, and then this film Helldiver, which is a Japanese and American fighter pilot that crash and learn to find their common humanity, and very
Wow.
powerful. And then our series looks at youth inside the high pressure education, inside the healthcare system where they're overprescribed meds young,
So
without
true.
looking at context. And then the third one was on the foster care system, how quickly we, you know, assume that a system can take care of our children better than the communities or the people. So it was really to raise the conversation. Again, it's not focusing on a specific things that say, okay, now what you need to do. But me
But
personally,
that's what we need. Like once you raise
yes,
that conversation, then
yes.
people become aware of the issue because it's all like hush hush and or people are afraid to express their real opinion.
Yes, no, it's true because they feel that they're so different and we have
Yeah.
this tremendous sense of wanting to belong. But for me, I wasn't so much interested in film as in the power of it to create the conversation. So I said, I'll do this film company if I can create initiatives related to it that could give people a place to go to be able to follow the shift or be a part of a community with other people doing the same thing. So I always say that my initiatives and the work that I do is related to here's this mechanistic, industrialized model of society that's really chewing us up and spitting us out. We have become the means to the end rather than having these systems or our work be a means to our end to support our families and be part of
Yeah.
our communities. And then the necessary human connectedness, I call it the mycelium, it's the energy that each of us needs to be a part of a community and contribute who we are to that. So I say that my films, my initiatives, my books are the bridge. They just show this tiny part of what's possible if people choose. Now, again, I am very, very respectful and, in fact, enjoy conversations with people who have different
Of
perspectives.
course.
I was just speaking at a school yesterday that was talking with young parents, and it was interesting to hear the different perspectives because, of course, they're like, how do I prepare my child? And I was talking about what I talk about in the book is the most important thing we can do is actually model what we want the life to be for our children instead of focusing so much on what they are going to be or
Right.
how they have. It's a discovery process. Meaning is a discover. You can't invent it, you can't create it, you must find it for yourself based on who you uniquely are. 8 billion of us, not one of us the same, and there is a reason for that. on our education film, there was Sir Ken Robinson, who is an education icon. He has still, I think, the #1 TED Talk in the world. He became an executive producer, and I was so excited to be able to work with him and his daughter in kind of furthering this message. And unfortunately, during the filming, he developed cancer and passed away within 11 weeks. It was very fast and
That's
very shocking.
devastating.
Devastating. And again, my mission wasn't so much to put the film out there as to say, let's have a conversation and where can you put your energy? Everything we do is run through schools.
Right.
Everything. I mean, the money, after school money, everything is run through these mechanistic systems. She introduced me to Elliot Washer. And Elliot had co-founded an innovative education organization called Big Picture Learning. And they actually worked in public schools in the most disadvantaged areas where 2 days a week the kids got out and did job shadowing, internships. They went out and
Like
explored.
more hands-on.
Yes, and they were part of advisory circles. They don't call them teachers. They didn't have that. The student, it's one student at a time. The students are the curriculum, the community's the classroom. In public schools, hugely successful.
Wow.
But you can't grow public schools. There's so much bureaucracy. And even situations where the school was great and it made all the other schools in the district look not so good. You know, there's a lot of dynamics at play,
Right.
political and otherwise, within our systems. And a lot of money that's has advantages that feed off of keeping the testing and the tutoring and the whatever in these systems. So Elliot had recognized this. There are about 285 schools around the world, about 100 here in the US, and said, you know, even though that's great over 30 years, it needed to happen in the community where all children would have the opportunity. And don't forget, right now, we have about 30% of kids don't go to school. And then that's not even counting the high percentage of kids in school who are just disengaged. They're just moving through and they're numbing themselves through it. And it's a tough thing to see. Elliot had come up with this program called Outlearners, which was big picture learning without the school, where kids could be connected around their interests. The key point is you start with the interests. You don't start with, oh, we think finance is a good place or STEM is a good place. We start with who you are and what you're pulled towards, what you'd like to explore. And it could be something you care about, like the oceans. It could be, it doesn't matter. You start with the interest, and that's where, as Rumi says, once you start walking the way appears.
Right.
And so it's getting them out of their comfort zone. Discomfort is a huge part of these programs. It's having them be uncomfortable exploring just a little bit within the community of supportive adults who want to work with them and show them whatever it might be. It could be a trade, it could be a science, but they're with the community, how we learned throughout time, right? And so anyway, so he was telling me about this Outlearner program. I said, I love it. Let's do it. You know, how do we create these in after school programs or parent organizations that can pull together and create the opportunities for kids to connect in their communities? We're actually doing it here in Orange County with Working Wardrobes. We're just starting Be Unbound. And so we called this new initiative together, Be Unbound. And so it will be available in Orange County. Right now, it's just to the groups that they're working with. Working Wardrobes is an amazing organization. People think it's just clothes, but really they have a huge workforce development arm. And we are talking about the difference between a job database, like an Indeed, okay, what's the job, and how important who you know is. So we call Be Unbound a relational database. So supportive adults, let's say you decided to sign up as a supportive adult and you wanted to talk about podcasting and starting a podcast and what you do. You could say that was your interest, and then as a student would be interested in, or a 14 to 24-year-old, it doesn't have to just be somebody in school, could say, I'm interested in that. And then there's an intermediary that would put the connection together. And if it's younger than 18, you would be background checked, et cetera. And then they can explore with someone who's actually doing it.
That is so neat. Yeah.
So this is exciting. And this is, we have about 30 pilots around the country, everything from boys and girls clubs to after school programs to makerspace to youth development. We're actually just contracted with Tasmanian education government, which will be
Wow.
going in May. So recognizing this need, that this disconnect between this linear, content-driven testing that takes so much time and this need to break down those walls and involve what's happening right now that are changing, I mean, creating tremendous opportunity. What is so amazing when you think about it is we say, oh, if we just get our kid a skill and they get a job, they're going to be great. Okay, well, there's more to life than
Yeah.
being a utilitarian value for an economy. And um, and what we have to understand is right now, the median full-time job for people under 35 is 2.8 years. And that's actually going down. Why? AI, technology, people choosing not to be in part of these systems. These
Yeah.
kids that I mentor, they're not doing it. They are not doing it. They are saying they'll do it for a year or two and then they're out. So you have this tremendous unemployment in a lot of these large organizations. At the same time, so we were in a period where we have these large institutional structures crumbling, what traditionally we had depended on. And we have these new systems that are just starting. So it's not quite fully developed, and we're right in between, right? So it's very uncomfortable, but it's also exciting. You know, you doing what you're doing now, imagine. Even my three daughters have opportunity. You know, I went to the 9 to 5 job in the specific building that did a very specific thing. And now they can work remote
Yeah.
part-time or
Things
all
have
the
changed
time,
so
or
much.
yes. And so you build a life in a different way. And this younger group, Heather McGowan, does a lot of work with this and looking at the generational shifts. Whereas we used to find a job and we'd move for the job. Okay, oh my gosh, I've got a great job in Cincinnati. I've got to move to
Right.
Cincinnati and then we'll find the community and all that. These kids are like, I want to know where my community is. I'm going to go where my community is. I'm going to go where the environment is that I want to be in, and I'm going to figure it out. And today, there's many ways for them to earn their living, right? You can do a full-time job. You could do a freelance. You can do a sharing economy. You could rent your car. You could rent your, I mean, when my daughter and son-in-law came here recently, they said, "Oh, Mom, can you give us a ride? We're going to pick up a car." And I'm thinking I'm going to Enterprise or Hertz or whatever. It was like 2 blocks away. There's some organization that, I mean, there's some app that you can rent somebody's car.
Are you serious? I didn't know
No.
about
Oh my
this.
gosh, it was crazy. And so I was like, okay, that is pretty interesting. So we have this sharing economy and that is completely shifting so much of what we're able to do and what we need. We can trade in ways that we weren't able before, right? I mean,
Right.
and we have the technology platforms that allow that connectedness to happen, right? And as people and communities that can find, other people, for instance, if you're interested in regenerative farming or organic food or, wellness things that don't have chemicals in it, just this explosion of new ways and new forms. And our kids, as they stay stuck in preparing for this end result, which is really just to get a college degree. And again, I talk about in my book, it's called the leaky funnel. If you take the number of ninth graders that actually start and get them all the way through to a college degree, it's only about 25% of them that actually end up with that 4-year coveted degree. And whether or not they make money on it for the cost of what that is, as you pointed out, the debt and
Yep.
but also for me, it's the human cost. It's that loss of the vibrancy of what we need in our communities as we're all discovering things and having the conversations and collaborating with each other to figure this out. So that's really where my work is in creating this community so future focused, and we have no control. It's
We have no
changing so
control.
fast. And so I reference Alan Watts, who wrote the book, The Wisdom of Insecurity, A Message for the Age of Anxiety, which was written in 1951, right? That we became so industrialized, so product oriented, so output oriented, so efficiency oriented that we lost so much of what makes us human and really makes life worth living. Again, which is showing up as we are and answering to the things life demands of us. And so, really pulling it back, what is in your control today? How well do we live such transactional lives, even with our kids. Did you do your homework? What time's the game? Where are we going? Instead of that, how are you doing today? What's going on? What are you
Yeah.
curious about?
Sometimes
What
I
do you
just feel
care
like there's
about?
no time for that, right? It's like they get
Exactly.
home and it's like I have to go do my homework and then you're making dinner
Right.
and then they usually have like 15 minutes. Like, oh, I have 15 minutes to eat, mom. Like I have three tests tomorrow. And it's like
Yes, yes,
you're
yes,
trying to
yes.
squeeze in, like, okay, so how was your day? What did you do? How was your report? I mean, what grade did you get? Real, I mean, it's not like I mean,
No.
and I'm very strict about making sure we have that family dinner even
Yes, me
if
too.
it's 15 minutes, I'm like, I don't care if it's 15 minutes. We're going to sit down together. You're not taking your food to your room. I don't care what's going on. But unless
Yeah.
it's like a weekend or even weekends are crazy. I mean, they have like mock trials and work. And I
I
mean,
know. I had three daughters, and really the focus was definitely on relationships, was on experiences and mentorships outside of school and home. I wanted them to be seen as something other than a test score or a grade or whatever, because, and you only do that when you're in a different environment, because in those school environments, it's a constant comparison.
yep.
Right. And of course, there's a gazillion studies about envy and, self-loathing and things that come when you don't feel like you're measuring up to some external thing. And so many people say, well, these kids these days are not motivated, they're not whatever. And I'm thinking, but we train them to just sit back. We say, look, listen to what we tell you. Don't question your teacher. Don't eat when you're hungry. Don't go to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom, because a lot of schools will restrict when you can go and how you can go, because kids are trying to get out.
Yeah.
They need that break. And it is very, very hard. And so, yes, was in it with my kids, really pulled back. Dinner was sacred, having them spend time out in the community pursuing things that they were interested in. And it's interesting that looking at where they ended up, my older daughter is a speech therapist with special needs kids, and she volunteered with special camp for special kids for many years and fell in love with this population. Didn't know what she wanted to do with it, but thought, oh my gosh.
So there
Uh,
is your example of hands-on training
yes,
experience. And then that's how
yes.
she find out what she really likes.
Well, but unfortunately, what was interesting is that senior year, she had already applied to college. You do
Yeah.
that early on. And she's like, I'm not sure what. So she thought she needed to go through the occupation, I forgot which one, but it ended up being under the education umbrella, not under the science side of speech therapy. And she worked with the Shea Center and shadowed her last May before she's graduating. And there she discovers her love of speech therapy. But she'd already applied to college. Why aren't we doing this earlier? The things that Big Picture Learning does and that we do with Be Unbound is they start early, right at the beginning of ninth grade. And in some cases, you can do it earlier by having them explore things they're interested in. And it doesn't matter if
Yeah.
it's deep sea fishing. If a kid is out fishing and loving it and seeing, plastic in the ocean and suddenly is like, hey, I want to do something about this. This is something I care about. They discover it. So you don't know. Or
Yeah.
even just having something that feeds your soul as a hobby, it gives you so much more energy to do something else. My middle daughter was the creative one, the actress and the screenwriter, and she taught me a lot. I'm like, whoa, what is that? Because I was the businesswoman and and learned a lot from her. And so she ended up getting a job that is with a large, very famous corporation doing PR, and but it's not a job she enjoys. But it allows her to write and do the things that she cares about. So I say, where your attention goes, your energy flows. Do your job. It's giving you your job becomes your means to an end to pursue this. Why, while the industry, of course, the whole film industry is, industry, as all industries are, we're going through tremendous change and upheaval, driven by many, many factors, including our humanness that's no longer agreeing to
Yeah.
this. We have literally and you see it in healthcare with doctors and nurses. We can't staff enough. They're like, we're not living that life where they're an input to an output. Educators leaving in droves, social workers leaving in droves. So we have these systems that don't even have the human capital
Yep.
to do what they need to do. And then my challenge is, what about our communities? What are we doing? So we're at this fork. I actually wrote a blog about a generation in between. So we have woken up to the fact that this institutional responsibility that we've turned over to these systems to prepare our kids, to take care of us health wise, to handle problems, criminal justice, whatever, really not working. They're not working for anybody in the system and the
Yeah.
people going through. So now what? As these crumble, what do we build? And that's where the opportunity is and where the excitement is. And people like you talking about this in your community, experiencing it. Because for a long time, we did just follow that. Oh, that's what you do. And
Right.
once you get there, you get the piece of paper. It's not working. We're all
Yeah.
seeing it's not working. And as all you have to do is look at prescription medication, mental illness with not enough. I
Yes.
mean, there's so,
Depression, anxiety.
yes, this is not how to live. And the craving, and COVID really, I think, highlighted this for so many people and a lot of students. This is not, I'm not doing this. And they see
Right.
the irrelevance, right? And yet we double down on the
Yeah.
on the irrelevance of content that takes away from who they know, how they learn to practice it, and most importantly, why they care about doing something, which is the meaning and purpose component. So we have a huge opportunity as
Yeah.
parents to come together. I mean, when I was doing kind of the alternative route, I was definitely the alternative weird parent. I mean, it's really funny because looking back, had I not been an older parent, it would have been really, really hard. And even with my kids, they'd be like, "Mom, don't talk about education." And I'm like, this is crazy. Is anybody thinking it's crazy? And people are like, you have to do it. They won't be successful in life. And I'm like, is anybody kind of seeing the adults? You have 75% of high school students disengaged, but you've got 80 or 85% of workers disengaged. I'm like,
There's like a problem right there.
I'm like, well, it's kind of something. But again, this comes back to our personal responsibility
Yeah.
to really look at this and decide, even if it's just an attitude shift, it doesn't mean it's just, okay, maybe I'm not going to spend so much time caring about whether they took the test or whether none of my kids were a 4.0, not one. I did not care about testing, nothing. They ended up in the world getting jobs with engineering salaries because of who they were. And they found it all through friends, no school, no nothing, helped them with that.
The
It was,
community, the networking, the connections.
yes, of people who knew them and who they knew. And I talk in the book about Julia Freeland Fisher from the Christensen Institute at Harvard, who talks about relationship mapping. And she's done a lot of work on this, where it's people say, well, I don't know who you know. I don't know the people. It's not about that level of person of who you know. It starts in your community. It starts in your family. Grandma's neighbor that may know somebody
Right.
who knows somebody. That's where you start. You start from where you are. And big picture learning, their schools are in very disadvantaged communities. And when they first started flagship school called the Met in the poorest area of Providence, Rhode Island, they're like, how are you going to get mentors for these kids? Well, they did. And within a couple of years, they had thousands that had come forward. And so really, I think, and it's that, instead of saying, oh, financial services is where you want to be, do an internship, smush, here, you've got a kid. And the mentor is like, I don't have time for this. I got to do it. But the kid is not feeling like they're really learning anything,
Yeah.
right? But so it's about following their interest with an adult who wants to be with it. And we've built huge databases. We're doing it right here in Orange County right now for adults who say, yeah, I'm willing to do it. It doesn't have to be about your job. As I said, it could be about your hobby,
Right.
that you're tremendously interested in cultivating a garden. And, there's a youth who can work right with you. We have the ecology center, our kids can go and explore and
Yeah.
learn about things even young. So it's really about breaking down the walls
Yes.
and having them be exposed to the greater community, and coming from parents who grew up in that fear era of 2011, 2001, and every single thing happening in the world was on our TV, happening in our living rooms. We end up very fearful that, oh my gosh, but we're creating the fragility in our children that is not allowing them to really prepare for life and prepare for life in the transitions, which has to happen with their understanding how to be part of ecosystems.
Hi, everyone. That's the end of the first half of episode with Pam Roy. Don't miss out part 2 next week as we dive even deeper into this discussion.